it came out yesterday, right before the Super Bowl, that Grammy-nominated rapper 21 Savage, who had actually a #1 hit on the Billboard charts for "I Am Greater Than I Was," was arrested by ICE in a sting operation because he was here illegally. His real name is not 21 Savage. That's his stage name. It's Shaya bin Abraham Joseph. And he was a local act since he was about 15, but he rose to fame very fast in 2015. He is one of the top artists in the United States of America right now. And apparently, according to ICE officials, he is actually a United Kingdom citizen who overstayed his visa and is now facing deportation. He was taken into custody Sunday morning in a targeted operation in Metro Atlanta. In July 2005, according to ICE officials, when he was 13, Abraham entered the U.S. legally, but stayed in the country after his visa expired a year later. The rapper was convicted of a felony drug charge in 2014, which is why he was never able to get his green card. Now we know why, as I'm reading. What have we learned, if anything, from watching Bradshaw Live?
No drugs.
Right? But ICE was not aware of his immigration status at the time and only learned later, and ICE officials said. According to CNN correspondent Nick Valencia, Abraham Joseph was in the car with another rapper who was the target of a criminal arrest. After law enforcement learned about his immigration status, Abraham Joseph was taken into custody. Now, if you're in a car and drugs are in the car, it belongs to everybody, whether you know the drugs are in the car or not. That's basic criminal law.
Jeez.
Just like if you're in a car with a gun and there's a gun in the car, it belongs to everybody unless somebody is going to take responsibility for it.
Right.
So, for example, if you remember the most famous that I recall, the most famous case of gun in a car and somebody's going to take responsibility for it happened about 10, 15 years ago. And the same goes for drugs as well. Happened about 10, 15 years ago. If you remember, there was a gunshot that went off in a club when P. Diddy was dating J-Lo. Now I'm dating everybody now. 15 years ago, maybe. And then P. Diddy and J-Lo left in a car in a big hurry. The cops pulled over the car and they found an unlicensed gun in the car. And J-Lo and P. Diddy and 2 security guards were all arrested.
Right.
Ultimately, they were all charged with gun possession. They were all facing at least 2 years in jail.
Wow.
Why 2 years in jail? If you remember Plexico Burress, another famous guy with a gun in New York, went to jail for 2 years because he possessed a gun. And apparently, and we don't know, I don't remember everything that transpired. I don't know what happened, the inner workings, but apparently one of the security guards took responsibility for that gun, said it was my gun, and then the other 3 charges were dropped from the other security guard, P. Diddy and J-Lo. Now, people say, P. Diddy, paid the security guard to say it. Who knows whose gun it is? I have no idea. That's all supposition.
Right.
Okay, but that's what happened. Now, I'm just learning about this from reading the card right now because I didn't really know the whole story. So apparently now, Abraham Joseph, which is 21 Savage, was in a car with drugs. And apparently he says it wasn't his drugs. He didn't know, but there was drugs in the car. Everybody gets arrested. Nobody took responsibility for those drugs. Everybody ended up pleading guilty. It's his lawyer's responsibility in 2015, to determine whether or not he had an immigration issue. It is the judge's responsibility to determine whether he had an immigration issue before pleading guilty. It's actually a constitutional law violation to not check somebody's immigration status after 2011 and have them plead guilty to an aggravated felony. Perhaps that is somewhere they can go to try to overturn or vacate the conviction. Because the only way that 21 Savage is going to stay in America is one of 3. One, he is in fact a U.S. citizen, and only if his mother or father was a U.S. citizen before he was born. 2, his life is in danger if he goes back to the United Kingdom. Somebody is out to kill him.
How do you prove that?
Judge, somebody's out to kill me. Let me tell you the story.
Right.
Okay. Oh, by the way, I just got this voicemail. They're out to kill me. They just threatened me.
If you ever touch down in London,
you're a dead man.
Right.
Okay. Or perhaps he turned state's evidence like the other rapper. What's his name? The guy with the tattoos all over his face?
Tekashi 6ix9ine.
Correct.
Woo!
Okay.
See, now you lose all respect from
See,
that.
Right. So now he turned state's evidence against all the other bad dudes he was associated with. And if he was not a U.S. citizen, I am sure that if he went to another country, he would be a dead man.
Absolutely.
All right. So, the government knows about this. I don't think that's the case here with 21 Savage.
Yeah.
And the last thing is to vacate his conviction. He needs the best criminal defense attorney that money can buy if he pled guilty in Georgia.
Right.
And somebody needs to go back to that criminal court judge and the district attorney who prosecuted him to vacate that conviction.
Gotcha.
Now, when you go to vacate a conviction, it's done in one of two ways. Either one, my rights were violated because I pled guilty in 2015, and you can see on the record, nobody asked me about my immigration status, nobody inquired about my immigration status, nobody checked my immigration status, and nobody told me that when I pled guilty in 2015 that I was deporting myself. Now, maybe they did check his immigration status. Maybe on the record he said I'm an American citizen because that's what he was claiming this whole time.
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
We don't know. We don't know what was said on the record. So it's possible that the judge said, are you a U.S. citizen or are you someone who is here out of status or have a green card? And he said, I'm a U.S. citizen. I don't know what was said because that's what he was claiming this whole time. But if he said that on the record that he's a U.S. citizen, nobody would have inquired and then wouldn't be a violation of his rights. But if the criminal defense attorney knew he was not a U.S. citizen, or the judge knew he was not a U.S. citizen, or the district attorney knew that he was not a U.S. citizen and didn't tell him that by pleading guilty to this drug offense, that you're in a car, that drugs were found, it may not have been yours, but you're pleading guilty to this, you're basically sending yourself off to be deported for the rest of your life, never to come back in America.
Not even to visit?
Not even to visit unless you get a waiver. Then that would be a violation of his rights.
Wow.
Now,
Nice.
let's assume that he said he was a U.S. citizen. Or let's assume he said he was a resident. And the judge told him his rights and he said, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's assume there was no violation of his constitutional rights.
Right.
If that's the case, then the only thing you can do is try to mediate it with the district attorney and say to the district attorney, look, this was not a serious offense, or this was not a violent offense, or this was not an offense that was serious as it compares to many other offenses.
Yeah.
There was actually even perhaps evidence to say that this client, 21 Savage, or my client, 21 Savage, is actually innocent.
Right.
And let me tell you all the wonderful things that this man does. And let me tell you about his life. And let me tell you about everything that's going to happen to him and his family if he were to be deported. And let's think about whether or not the right result of this man's life should be getting deported because he was in a car that you happen to find drugs.
Right.
We think it's an unjust result.
Right.
And then hopefully the district attorney or the judge feels the same way. If the district attorney feels the same way and you feel the same way, then you make a joint motion to the court and ask to have the sentence changed. The judge will do it.
Got it.
Or you can go to the judge and the district attorney says, no, this guy should be deported. But the judge says, you say, hey, judge, have a heart. Let's reopen this case. The judge has the right to do it.
Right.
Doesn't mean he will.
Right.
But that's really it. Now, I saw Jonathan, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. On Instagram, there was a bunch of rappers getting together saying, we got to find the best attorney that money could buy.
The best immigration.
The best immigration attorney. Let me say, you need a really good criminal defense attorney first. You may need an immigration attorney at some point. But unless you're going to get this case vacated, I don't think he's a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
I don't think, unless there's some story about why his life's in danger if he goes back to the UK, you need a criminal defense attorney.
Wow.
Right.
I'm happy to take the case, though.
Yeah.